scared of it. I won't ever go down there. There is a bathroom down there though. What used to be? It's just a dirt floor kind of thing.
Those mirrors.
That was Gaffer Agency. Henline. So that's what that means. We sold that to renovate. I don't know where we kept his furniture. It's now we're it'd be nice.
Well, yeah, we thought building was something. Just be here or do something. Virginia.
Jim Brown was kind of a local guy, was real and he had some photographic analysis.
So do you still own?
Very something close to akin to what she put together. Literally, it was his and they're the ones that were there, where Richmond, and even the balcony is stated that it was a balcony on the side, but it was never.
I love seeing that and seeing that. You know, your house is a good investment. You know, so I mean, it's a win-win.
So I just, you know.
Well, that's what.
Like I see, like, somehow that one.
I say, that's kind of how.
It's like home
I
again.
mean, my parents have their house, so it works out.
Home trucks, their sleeves are still in place. It's incredible.
That's right, I know.
Yeah, we had a really, really good.
I see they're pretty good. That's what, McEwen's is just, to pay for repairs in the home. That's what we say.
Of course, I've never seen it. It's really cool.
Well, and I'll have to split it. It's my cousin. And so, but she doesn't do
There's a
it.
function center of
And
commerce.
then I have promised my parents my side I would split with my brother and sister. So essentially, nothing.
Yeah, no, no.
You had what, two? You had
But
two,
it's fine.
two
And my
orders.
brother would be like that.
Madison's where,
You know.
yeah, Fudge Grocery where,
And that's the beauty of it. It's like, you know, it's great.
All right.
And the instructions, it's just nice.
All right, welcome everyone. We are, just for everybody in the crowd, we're doing a little internal work ourselves up front before we get to y'all's cases. So we have some ordinance changes, guidelines changes to discuss. So we're gonna do some of that sort of sausage making, and then we'll get to the cases. So thank y'all for your patience. So I am calling to order the courthouse square. We have an agenda in front of us. Is there a motion to approve it, please?
I so move.
All in favor? Aye. Jack?
I'm calling to order a meeting of the Oxford Historic Preservation Commission. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
And just for the record, for Courthouse Square, we have Commissioner Webb joining us virtually, and for the Historic Preservation Commission, we have Commissioners Luckenbach and Scruggs joining us virtually.
Yeah, so my apologies, Taylor, I should have asked for your vote, and I assume you're in for approving the agenda. All right, so now we're going to move to our discussion of the changes to ordinance and the recommendations, which were emailed to us on Friday for review.
Both commissions.
Yeah, for both commissions. So I think it's an open discussion among both commissions at this point. And we're not working our way towards any sort of binding vote. We're making a vote for recommendation for approval or not to the Board of Aldermen.
Correct, and I can just take you guys through, the main changes are in the ordinance, which was the first portion of the document that was sent to you related to demolition. Had issues with our current procedure with both commissions, so we pretty much reworked that whole section. And then the second item was one portion of our new design guidelines, which we're also working towards approval of those, related to sizing of additions for additions to historic buildings. So that was what the two documents were.
If I could jump in, so we've had some questions about high level, and I've reviewed the ordinance changes, and I think they're very positive and good. I'm for them with no changes. High level question has been asked numerous times, so I'm going to relay this question from my commission to you all. Do we have in place changes in the ordinance the best we can to try and prevent another 208?
Yes.
I agree with that. I think we do as well.
We couldn't quite hear.
Do we have provisions in place in the ordinance that would, I guess, prevent a 208 situation from happening again? Where 208, the building 208, South Lamar, the old Smitty's building?
So the history on that, I guess, for if everybody wasn't following it, is that it was an emergency demolition that literally, it was a danger to the public. So the demolition was approved without an approved replacement for it. And now, as we see 3 years later, we still have no building there, and we want to try and prevent that. So do you want to just sort of touch on some of the items that are there to prevent that? I know we should have all read it, but.
Well, yeah, I think going back to what I think we've said many times, I think, procedurally dealing with that type of a situation, it was the first time we've ever experienced where the building official declared a building unsafe and required that a portion of it or all of it be demolished. So I think moving forward, we would, we would require that at a minimum, a landscaping plan be provided with a bond to implement that landscaping plan. And we would have to determine that. I think you as the commission are going to probably evaluate a request like that much differently than what you had before you at that time, because you've now got a little bit more experience and you know what you don't want to have happen again. So I think that those provisions are already there. It was just very unusual circumstances that we were facing.
Additionally, we've added in the ability of the city to require the applicant to hire a structural engineer.
Yeah, whereas
It would be chosen by the city rather than that.
Our current ordinance requires the applicant to provide a structural engineer's report. And so we believe that having the potential for the city to be able to get an independent analysis as paid for by the applicant would at least provide y'all with information about things that we're going to ask are questions of, are there methods that could be implemented to preserve the existing structure? Sometimes we get an engineer that isn't asked that question. A structural engineer that isn't asked that question, I was asked if this warrants demolition. And we, leading that effort, will ask those appropriate questions and make sure that their analysis incorporates that. What would have to be done to make sure that this building is structurally sound?
Right.
So that a determination can be made on cost and et cetera. And isn't there also some language in there about neighboring buildings? That it gives us the ability to question things like, what are you going to do for exposed walls of neighboring buildings and things like that? Yeah.
Yes.
I feel like it's all there, personally.
All good, really, Tracy?
Are we ending the?
No, I think this is discussion.
I think we're going to have open discussion,
Yeah,
and
sort
I
of
think
on the
both
ordinance.
commissions can
I
enter.
think we have at least a point, but it's not in this particular section.
Yeah, I have discussion on the guidelines and the 50% rule too, but I guess,
So y'all don't have any issues with the language that's proposed on demolitions?
Well, yeah, if we're speaking in the broadest sense, we do. Particularly under the section unauthorized demolition. One of our commissioners, Luke High School, has raised a point that I think is a very valid one, and I would ask Luke if he would share that now.
So, under the unauthorized demolition, the penalties come up to, they're changing the fees, but also a 2-year,
48 months. 48 months?
48 months.
48 months, yeah, I'm sorry, where you can't build back. And my question is that all? I mean, I saw where the value, the fee, the penalties could change. But I was talking to Jack, I said, you got somebody who goes out and buys one of these houses and says, well, I'm gonna just tear it down in the middle of the night and I'll take my penalty for 4 years to 24.
It's 48 months.
48 months.
48 months.
yeah, 4 years.
So that did get changed, right? That's changed.
That's a new provision.
We added it.
That's a new
What
provision.
was it before?
It didn't exist. This is a whole new section that
Okay.
does not previously exist.
So that gets that person, because they just gone out and bought a property, they're gonna have interest for 4 years, they can't, let alone.
And
Yeah,
it says,
not.
it says we have the authority to do so. It doesn't say it's must, it's binding.
It gives you discretion to be able to determine, if 24 months is appropriate, if 12 months is appropriate. So it gives the commission the ability to enforce that from the time that an application is submitted.
There's more.
But with, say somebody's inherited the house, they don't even live here in town, and they say, well, I don't want to live there, I don't want to keep it up, just tear it down, I don't care. I don't need to build a house in 4 years and pay the property taxes for the next 4 years, and in 4 years, and by the time I'm maybe near retirement, I can sell it. It's not gonna stop them that much, is it?
No? But I also don't think that we have that problem happening maybe as much as we have unauthorized demolitions actually occur.
Yeah.
And they would have issues with not only not having a certificate of appropriateness, they wouldn't have the relevant permits either. So they're getting doubly, they wouldn't have a demolition permit if they were doing it in that case either. So they're getting doubly fined potentially.
It's gonna be a double time.
Right, because they'd be fined under this ordinance provision and they would not have received the appropriate permit. So there's punishable action there as well. And then in terms of the fee, we obviously sent this to our, the city attorney prior to bringing it to you guys, and our fee was out of step with what's enabled by state legislation. So that's why the fee's changing. Because what we had didn't match what the state enables us to charge.
Which is a maximum of $500 per day per incident.
That's what the state allows.
That is,
Yes.
that's state law.
This does not say $500 a day.
It just says 500, yeah.
It just says a maximum of
It doesn't say maximum.
It says up to $500?
It says shall be punishable by a fine of 500 or an amount otherwise determined by the court for each offense.
But it does not include the words per day.
Before it said not to exceed $1,000.
Before it says it, that the penalty is any provision, so any person violating any provision of the article shall be guilty of a misdemeanor and shall be deemed guilty of a separate violation for each day during which any violation hereof is committed. So it's already implied, or it's already stated that a violation is per day.
Well, I would just suggest we add that verbiage to the rest of it to make it more clear.
Okay?
I see what you're saying.
So you're looking at,
It says each violation shall be punished by, and it already says that the violation is per day.
5432.
I think what we're saying is, in that section, the sentence that specifies $500, we add the two words per day.
Okay.
Yeah, it is interesting because it says shall be deemed guilty of a separate violation for each day during which any violation hereof is committed. And then it says upon conviction, each violation shall be punishable by a fine of $500.
So each day is a separate violation. It just doesn't read super clear, I guess.
Yeah.
I didn't understand it to mean every day when I read it.
So Luke, are y'all saying that you'd like for that, the part in red there to say shall be punishable by a fine of $500 per day?
Just clarifies it.
Yeah.
We are.
For the period of time that commission makes a determination that.
Well, the courts would make that
Okay,
determination.
thank you, all right,
Yeah, I mean, the courts are already going to use the statute that's in place.
okay.
So we'll clean this up to make sure it's consistent with state statute. That's what we were already trying to do.
Luke, can I expand? Luke's comments, which I think are valid, about the section, if the resource is completely demolished, the commission shall have the authority to deny any application on the same property for up to 48 months.
Hey, Kate, I'm sorry to interrupt, do you have it to put on the screen
Yeah,
for
sure.
folks who don't have it in front of them? Thank you. I'm sorry, Joe.
Go ahead, Jeff.
to interrupt you.
For up to 48 months, Luke cited 3 examples of when that could happen. One, when a contractor accidentally or intentionally bumps a house down. And that's the seemingly the worst case scenario. And the 48-month hiatus where nothing can happen is a pretty severe punishment if he's got a lot of money invested and he can't do anything with it for 48 months. The other 2 scenarios are a developer, let's say, who has a number of rental properties around the city and is not necessarily in a hurry to build a new house, but wants to buy an existing property for the future plans of restoring or flipping it or whatever. That person could make the decision to knock the house down, understanding that he will pay a fine and what other remedies are in place. But after 48 months, he's able to come in and do whatever he wanted to do in the first place. You know, it's probably not a big investment for him to pay fines and so forth, just to get the property, hold it for 2 years, 48 months, and then build the structure.
But at that time, he's coming before the commission, which violated the provisions of that approval. So,
He's
I
coming
think
before he's coming before the commission in 48 months.
right. And he's demolished the historic structure that was there before, and now he has to get the approval of that commission. So I think there's
So
a lot of.
do y'all feel like the verbiage in here gives the commission the authority after 48 months of him following exactly what it says here, for the commission to say, you cheated, so we're not gonna give you a COA? Because he wouldn't have cheated.
No, but I think it's stronger than what we had before, which was nothing. Does that make sense? We're adding a deterrent, but I don't think it would enable the commission to indefinitely.
I think we're just trying to point out loopholes. That's a loophole.
And I guess,
So would you propose alternatively that would, I guess I'm trying to get a read on your, if you're suggesting something that would be longer?
I know.
no, I think we're just looking at,
We're not suggesting, we're pointing out concerns we have with the document as it's
Sure.
written.
Is
I'm just
there-
not sure how to fix it.
is there any way, and it might not be considered legal either, but at that 48-month period to say, yes, you can build back, but you have to build back something that looked like the original house. That would,
Some cities require a reconstruction of what was there. I've never liked that personally, because in my opinion, it's kind of against the guidelines, which are
consideration for the COA at that time will be considered a special circumstance.
Maybe
Meaning, I think.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying.
To give.
It's gonna be evaluated differently than just a typical
Yeah,
COA.
at the end of the 48 months, if you have intentionally demolished
Mhm.
a historic house, when you come at the end of the 48 months, your case will be considered under special circumstances, or something to give the commission more authority to enforce the style of house.
Yeah, Kate, to your point, I might push back on your point and suggest that I understand the evolution of a street, but in this instance,
That would be quite a punishment if you
Well, in this-
demolish a minimal traditional house, you have to build it back, exactly.
in this instance, the commission wouldn't have granted that, and so it isn't progression. It's somebody that's taken advantage of the system and torn the house down, and so, you know, you might want it to go back exactly the way it is, and I think what's being suggested is having all the tools in a toolbox for the commission to be able to have at their discretion at that time.
Yeah, rather than a commission being put in a position of having to make a decision with some personal punitive motivation, which wouldn't be good. It would be better if the guidelines gave the commission some authority to.
What about language that just says that, the structure that has been demolished shall be considered upon reapplication for new construction? You know, so that it reminds everybody, staff, which may have changed in 4 years, commission that may have changed in 4 years, that you need to take into account what was demolished, but you don't have to force them to build it back, just take it into account.
Exactly, not forcing them to reproduce the house, but rather giving the commission, because you're right, commissions change and staff changes. But if it's in the guidelines,
Mhm.
the commission will be aware that because of the circumstances, they are given additional authority or.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
It also goes to not just that structure of property, it goes to the neighboring properties. People would have follow all the guidelines next door, and their neighbor tears one down in the middle of the night, or, you know, during the construction accident, and then 4 years later, they want to build something completely different. You know, what is that?
And you know, the 48-month moratorium is not something that's new to the ordinance. In fact, that was put in place in around 2007, 8, 6, 7, 8, 9, somewhere in there, where there was much speculation that was actually happening in the historic district when there was the housing collapse and that crisis back then. And you had developers that were coming in and they were buying properties, they would tear them down and try and sell them for, you know, new construction. And so the commission wanted to have in place a provision that was a deterrent to that.
Yeah, I think I've been saying 24 months, I realize it's 48 months, and that is a long time for somebody to buy property and have to sit on it before they do anything else, and that's a strong deterrent. But again, we were just anticipating the worst case scenario, because developers in Oxford, perhaps 4 years is not that long time.
When where I was going to go is we put the 48-month in there because it's not something that's it's consistent with what the ordinance had already had in place. Y'all may determine that 72 months is appropriate, 60 months is appropriate. What we tried working in here is language that provided the commission with some flexibility, so that way if 4 years down the road, 3 years down the road, there was consideration to be given to a design to be constructed there, then you had the flexibility to be able to move forward with that. It wasn't just a carte blanche 48 months. That's how it was previously put in place back in 2007. In fact, there was I think a restrictive deed that was required to be filed with the property at that time, and so for 48 months, you couldn't do anything with it. this at least provides
This is an
a
improvement.
deterrent, but some flexibility to the commission, and I appreciate the comment that y'all are both making regarding the design and making sure that you guys have the ability to fully consider the circumstances at that time, which also include the structure that was previously taken down as part of the decision-making process. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah, and so working our way towards the end goal here, do we need to get the wording exact on, so we can make motions for recommendation of approval, or empower you all to change the wording? Where are we headed here with that?
Whatever the commission's pleasure.
Okay. That's what I thought you were gonna say.
I would like time to work on it, but
Do we have to?
Well, I mean, so we're gonna go from here, and we're gonna take it to the ordinance review. Before we took it to the ordinance review committee, we wanted your input
Okay.
on these provisions. And so the ordinance review committee consists of 2 members of the planning commission, 2 members of the mayor and board of aldermen, legal counsel, several other staff members, city staff members. I think it would be appropriate to have the chairs of both commissions participate in that conversation and represent your commission at that meeting. I think that we would welcome that, and so you would be able to at least take the language, and we will email that language to y'all, so that way you can at least see it. But from there, it goes to ordinance review, and then they'll, they'll give us guidance. If it's ready to move forward, then we'll take it to the mayor and board of aldermen, where it will have a first reading public hearing. And so there's still a public process that this will ultimately go through, but, and we can continue to keep both commissions
there's like 5 more
informed.
steps.
Yeah.
so.
Okay,
I think our commission would be happy, voting on a motion that would include the verbiage subject to, refinement of verbiage in section 3, number 4.
And also the enforcement provision.
Yes, yeah, so we could go in and vote it through,
yeah,
signaling that it's subject to a tweak, by the staff to conform to what has been said.
Okay. Do you want to talk about the other element?
is there any more on ordinance?
Do you want to move forward with motions on the ordinance provision? And
Sure,
then,
it sounds like that's pretty
Yeah.
easy to do now.
Andy, you were going to say something suggested? It looked like you were going to say.
No.
Okay. Yep.
All right, so we'll do our commission first, then. It would be a motion to recommend approval of changes to the ordinance with revisions as discussed.
Yep.
Yeah. If someone would make that motion, please.
I so move.
Wait a minute.
Wait.
We'll do courthouse.
Just us.
Yeah.
A second, oh, go ahead.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Taylor? Taylor, you with us?
He's muted. Or was.
Taylor, is that an aye?
Taylor?
Taylor, can
Taylor
you
Webb,
hear us?
is that an aye on the motion?
It looks like he's speaking, but
Yeah, it does, but his mic is crossed, so almost like it's muted. Oh, it's good.
do you have the ability to chat, Taylor?
I'm about to check.
He gave a hand, I see it. He put a
There we
hand
go.
up. Okay, thank you, we got it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Taylor.
And then,
Is there a
y'all.
motion from the Oxford Historic Preservation Commission that is exactly the same as that motion we heard from the Courthouse Square Commission? Is there a second? Do we vote?
Yes, sir.
All in favor, say aye, or signal aye.
Virginia, how do you vote? Aye. Perfect. And I heard Diane vote aye. Thank y'all.
Okay. So now the guidelines. Just to remind you guys, the back 2 pages of the packet particularly a item that came up at our most recent Historic Preservation Commission meeting, with a proposed change to the new additions to historic structures section of the guidelines. There was a discussion about the new guidelines recommend to design the size and height of an addition to be subordinate to that of the historic building, and that the building footprint of an addition should not exceed 50% of the building footprint of the historic portions of the building. And then it was suggested that that could be softened or even eliminated because it's pretty restrictive. So that's what brought us here to this.
Correct. Just for this element, y'all have
Yes.
already considered and recommended approval of the other elements of the design guidelines, but this was slightly different.
So
Yeah.
we suggested adding unless otherwise determined by the commission to kind of soften it, but ready to hear discussion about that.
Yeah, and I'm the one that's been signaling that I want to discuss this, so I'll go ahead and rip the Band-Aid off. And I'm a little bit conflicted, right? I'm an architect who does work in this city. I will say I don't do a whole lot of single family, so you can either take that as like he doesn't know what he's talking about, or he's objective in this. I just have a hard time with putting that 50% number into the ordinance. And I had a case before y'all recently that I signaled that I have a hard time with that. So this is not necessarily me as a commissioner, or it's me jumping back and forth from professional to commissioner to professional, but I just know that when we put a number like that in an ordinance, it's hard for us, even if it's just a recommendation, it's hard for us as commissioners to get away from it, because it's a number and it's 50%. And we have to kind of then at that point justify in our mind getting away from that number. So as a professional coming before y'all, you know, I would say it's working against a lot of the things that as a commissioner I feel like we're supposed to be doing, which is first and foremost, you know, the main tenet that this whole thing is based on is make sure that buildings can evolve and continue to be functional and usable lest they fall into a state of disrepair. And my concern is that if we're limiting, let's take 1,000 square foot, 2-bed, 1-bath house to an addition of 50% of that footprint, either we're making it where nobody can really bring that up to current standards and it's going to continue to be a small rental house, or they're going to say, all right, cool, we'll go up with it because it's footprint. So now we're going to propose 3 stories. Well, now we're working against scale and massing and proportion in another way. We're working against other requirements that we're supposed to be reviewing. So you can see I'm sort of, I'm half commissioner, I see problems, half as a professional, I see problems with it. And for some perspective, you know, if someone came to me and said, I have 1,000 square foot, 2-bed, 1-bath house, and we want to add a den and a master suite on the back, that's 1,000 square feet right there, 800 to 1,000 square feet addition. So I would have to tell them, I'm not going to take the job because it's just not something that I can give to you. My concern is that we're going to freeze the evolution of these neighborhoods, and I feel like we already have the method for evaluating these subjectively by scale and massing and proportion and rhythm, where I just don't know that we have to have a 50% limit. So,
What is the rationale? I'm just curious there. Do we have, is there a historical basis for it?
Yeah, so
I
this was,
understand why you'd want it, sure.
it was, to be fair, Ben and I didn't come up with this, was the consultant who did the new guidelines, and they were directed to look at other cities, because we have an issue with overly large additions, we just do. And that's not what Stuart's talking about here. We're talking about people that want to raise the roof and double the house and, you know, do all this stuff. And so they were directed to look at other cities, and this is their solution, which I do think is consistent with other cities that I've seen, but I can understand, you know, it being an issue, and it's pretty restrictive. It is.
I can speak to it, because I'm one of the people that raised the concern. I have a house in another state, and it's one of the guidelines that's closely followed. And I think, generally speaking, the reason for that is to keep a street or a neighborhood that has traditionally been consisted of smaller cottages, homes, from becoming, you know, making very few people buy them to maintain a small charming house. They buy them to make them into a much bigger house. My personal observation was that we need to hang on to small charming houses when we can. Stuart, I absolutely understand what you're saying. Is there a percentage of addition that you would be comfortable with? Because as Katie said, you know, it's not we want to make a den and another bedroom and bath. It's we want to buy the bungalow and make it a 6-bedroom house with a pool and, you know, on and on. Even though in many cases you don't really see it from the street, but it becomes a major structure, and I think it really changes the nature of the neighborhood.
Yeah, I think that we see each other's position. I mean, I get it too, what you're saying. And Ben can, y'all can deride me for this, because I've always said if it's a number, put it in the ordinance so everybody knows it's a number. And we've had our battles over that. And now I'm saying, don't put the number in the ordinance.
It's funny how his positions evolve sometimes.
It's getting gold.
Yeah, I'm calling out my own hypocrisy here, but
It's okay.
But I mean, and, you know, these commissions are much more subjective than a planning commission where we've had those discussions. And so my feeling is that we already have the tools there to evaluate it on scale and massing, you know, all the 7 items that we are to review by. And I just don't feel that it has to be a number, is my opinion. Now, like I said, I don't do a lot of this kind of work, so I'm fairly objective in this. I can see that this is, as a professional, I can see that this is going to be pretty restrictive, and I truly mean that. I would just not take the job, because it'd be too hard of a fight to fight against that 50%, because once it's in there, it's hard for commissioners to get away from that, even though it says otherwise determined by the commission. So it really is me, you know, it doesn't affect what we do here either. I mean, we don't ever come up against this as a commission either. So it really is just me as a professional saying, I just think that it's pretty restrictive. I'd be curious to know what other professionals feel.
I think that was my
Design
point, is that I would defer to those who have structures that would fall under this
Yeah.
particular statute versus us weighing in on this.
It really is true. You're right, Andy.
For me personally, and I understand your point as well made.
There is a real difference in the responsibility of the Courthouse Square Commission and the Residential Commission. It's pretty much two
Big difference.
completely different animals.
And what this commission has had, I'm sorry. Did I cut somebody?
Jack, I just wanted to add something. This is Diane. Having a number that you can either go below or above really helps, I think, our commission, because it's objective depending on the circumstances of each building. And we try not to paint ourselves in a corner and have open Pandora's box. So I think we really need to have something fixed that we can deviate from if we need to. But if it's wide open, then it seems to me that we're playing favorites on how something might have been presented to us. It just gives us something to hang our hat on, I think.
Diane, you're saying to try to come up with some percentage that would be a reasonable negotiating point?
I am.
Thank you.
And let me say this, I really have struggled for months over how to bring this up. Being a commissioner on one commission that is not particularly relevant to, and not wanting to pick at another commission who feels this is important. I've had a lot of conversations with staff of like, do I do this, do I not? Because it really is just me as a professional in the community, a design professional, not a commissioner. So, and Andy, what you said, it actually really resonates with me, that we should defer to those who the commission that this really matters to. Now, we do have to vote on these. So I guess saying that, I've voiced my concerns, but ultimately I probably should just listen to what you all say on that particular item.
Ben, would it make any difference if this were written in a differentiating way? Meaning
Well,
different for
the way that this is written,
courthouse and residences?
it depends on the section. So this is actually in
The residential section.
the residential section, so it already is. So now, that's not to say that there aren't residential properties that are inside the Courthouse Square District, because there are. But the predominance of the structures inside of that district are more commercial in nature, and y'all govern majority residential. It's like y'all have a few commercial properties, and you know, where applicable, you have to deal with those. So you know, and we try providing some flexibility. You know, y'all may determine. I mean, these are guidelines, right? You know, they're not like the ordinance where it's fairly finite. You know, it does provide a little bit of flexibility. Stuart, I could argue the same way. I can go on both sides of this, and if you look at scale and massing, and you know, to your point about building footprint, and you know, they may go up. Look at Avon Acres. You know, doesn't have that restriction. We've seen a lot of buildings that have gone up, but we've also seen an awful lot of square footage that's been added. You know, as well, and you know, to their point, and you look at some of the structures that have been constructed, and while they're nice and they're nice looking, and people have done a very nice job with the you know, the design. To Jack's point, it does somewhat feel different when driving through the neighborhood and seeing many of those new structures that go up there larger. It's just a different area. But I mean, you know, it's also hard to live in a 900 square foot
Could I
building
ask a
for a
question?
family of
I know this is playing
3.
devil's advocate, but it says that you refer to it as the building footprint of an addition should not exceed 50% of the building's footprint of the historic portions of the building, portions to remain that are at least 50 years old. Well, could there be additions ahead of time? And then you were going to add more additions? And will that cause a problem?
Like someone could game the system with.
Like maybe you've already added on and then you want to add more and.
But wouldn't that hurt you in that
I
instance?
don't know, I'm just saying it's.
Let's say you have a craftsman, or let's not go craftsman, let's say you have a 3-2, like minimal traditional house, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. Even if that's already been added on to, this is saying that you're taking into account the historic footprint. So even if there's already a rear addition, the staff and the commission are taking into account the original
It's not
historic
50
footprint,
years.
which if it's been added onto correctly would still be fairly discernible to do.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So the addition could be considered part of the historic,
No.
maybe not the original.
No. What I'm saying is, if let's say you have a 1950s house, like we see in Avon Acres, and there's an addition that was added in 2003 on the back. You're in the historic district, you're not in Avon Acres, but there's already an existing 2003 addition. So that's a newer addition that doesn't retain any integrity. It's not 50 years old. It's a modern addition. And the homeowner comes in and says, which happens a lot in the historic districts, they come in and say, well, we want to remove, that wasn't done at all. We want to remove this addition and build a new addition that encompasses that area and goes back further. You're still taking into account the footprint, and the way this reads is you're still taking into account the original footprint, not the footprint with the addition.
So I think,
That's how I read it.
well, the way I'm reading it, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I read it is you're talking about 1950s. I'm just going to simplify it and say you have a 1,000 square foot house.
Yep.
The footprint is 1,000 square feet.
And it's original.
800 of it is original. There was a 200 foot addition that was added to it for whatever. You're not gonna be able to add more than, as this is written, more than
299.
400 feet.
Well, 299, right? Because you've got.
Because you already
200.
have the 200.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, in total, you'd be limited to 400 feet, and you already have, what did I say? 200. Yeah, so you would already have 200, so, yeah.
Okay.
Said another way, I think there are two-bedroom houses all over Oxford that should continue to be two-bedroom houses, or maybe three, but not go from 2 to 6. You know, we see things on our commission where somebody buys a bungalow, literally, of 1,200 feet, and they come to us with plans for a 4,600 square foot house. And, you know, what are we preserving if we prove that? We're just reshaping neighborhoods.
And I think to Stuart's point, I mean, you know, you do have provisions in there that you could request a massing study. You know, and if somebody was trying to go up with it, I might request some sort of a study of all the bulk or the scale of, you know, this new home compared to everything else. So I think Stuart's saying you do have some tools that are there that you can, as a commission, can deploy in evaluating whether or not the proposed McMansion is inconsistent or incompatible with the rest of the neighborhood and the street.
Yeah. And that's true. If it weren't for the ability of, in many lots, to do all that, and it's unseen from the street, you're still transforming 1,200 square foot house into a 4,400 square foot house, but you don't really notice it when you drive by. I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing.
We had one on Pierce that was about probably 1,800 square feet. It was a ranch-style house, and it was on a lot that was my favorite lot in all of Oxford, and it was probably a little over an acre, massive mature trees, and they increased. I don't remember the square footage, but you know, those are things that you have to take into consideration though too. Is, you know, the size of the site. Is it more appropriate at that site because it's a larger lot? You know, like anyway. I'm just.
Well, but the commission held that. I mean, they were trying to put in multiple units there.
That's right.
And it was denied at the commission level. So
That's right.
It worked in that instance. The current ordinance.
Could we do something so general as add verbiage that the consideration of the percentage of increase from the original structure
Rather than having a number.
will be a consideration?
Yeah, definitely.
I mean,
Yeah.
without a percentage, but giving the commission the ability to say, no, it's too big.
I think rather than how it reads now, I'm just gonna say it and then we can fix it later, but design the size and height of an addition to be subordinate to that of the historic building, which that's already in the guidelines. The commission, consideration will be given by the commission to the size of the new addition in relation to the historic building footprint, or something like that.
I would even go a step further and suggest the context of the surrounding neighborhood.
Yeah, I think we could come up with something that would accomplish it without a number.
You're moving from objective to subjective, but that's probably the best way to work through that.
And
Yeah, I agree. Percentage is difficult to deal with.
it's pretty binding, especially the way it's written, because it sort of says it's guilty until proven innocent. It's saying it must be 50% unless you can justify otherwise. I would suggest, and look, let me say, I will support whatever y'all decide, because Andy's right, it really is y'all's. It's your bid. So, but it really, I feel like it should be the reverse. Like, the commission should, might consider carefully, once an addition goes over 50%, the appropriateness of the size of that addition, so that it's not like you have to justify going over. It's, we understand you may want to go over, and we'll just think carefully about it.
I personally would be comfortable with that. Diane, Virginia, would that satisfy you?
Yeah, this is Virginia. Oh, Diane, go ahead.
Yeah, no, you go ahead. You jump in.
I was just going to say, personally and professionally, I do think I agree with Stuart. This is really restrictive. So the idea of not having a number in there, and more so something that says if it does exceed 50%, you know, it just gives us a little leeway. I just feel like, you know, we have these guidelines about scale and lot coverage and things like that that guide us without having something so concrete as 50%. So I understand, you know, unless otherwise determined by the commission, but that just puts the burden on the owner on every one project. And I think each project is different. And I think, you know, we look at all these cases as individual cases, and I think we need to continue doing that even in this lot coverage issue.
Diane?
And I agree with that. It's not that I'm looking for a specific number that we can go below or above on, but I'm just making sure we don't paint ourselves in a corner where we are going in a direction we don't want to go. Each case that comes before our commission is different, and there are different circumstances and different buildings, and I don't want us to ever be in a position where we are straightforward, by the book, and we're not taking care of the people that come before us. We have gone a long way, and I think in overcoming a reputation of just going no, 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 to working with the people that come before us, and I'd like to continue that, but I want to make sure we have something to hang our hat on if we're ever confronted with, well, you did this for Joe Blow, so you need to do this for us. You know, I'm trying to make sure that we have a little leeway, and I don't know that I know exactly how to do that.
Thank you. Stuart, will you repeat what you just suggested a few minutes ago?
Oh, man. Short-term memory. I mean, I would, maybe something like, should the addition exceed 50% of the historical portion of the building, the commission should evaluate it carefully for its proportion to the existing. There you go. Tie it back into the rest of the guidelines. Yeah.
And I think that makes sense because truthfully, we don't have anything else in the ordinance that talks specifically about the footprint. We talk about massing, scale, rhythm, whatever, and this can be a way to attach footprint to that.
Yeah.
One thing that could be added is also the scale of the lot.
Sure.
If it's a really big lot and it's got an 800 square foot house on it, you're only gonna have 4. That should be considered also.
So what I propose is that, like the last motion that we just have, the commission provides some discretion to staff to refine this language. And since the HPC is meeting in 2 weeks, we can refine that language for that meeting for y'all to just consider. And then we can, as long as you're satisfied with that language, and we'll communicate this and we'll provide y'all with that language ultimately of what's recommended. But then like this will go before the mayor and board of aldermen. There will be a public, process for that. And so then that way we at least have some more discussion about this. It comes back to you before we even take it to the next step.
But I think the phrasing that Stuart suggested, coupled with Luke's suggestion, would satisfy our commission.
You bet.
Thank y'all for entertaining my thoughts on it. Thank you.
This is how sausage is made.
Yeah, I like it. All right, so we need to hear a motion to recommend approval to the Board of Aldermen with revisions as discussed.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Taylor?
Aye.
Raise its hand.
Yep, we got Taylor. Okay.
The Oxford Historic Preservation Commission, the floor is open for a motion that would mimic the one we've just heard from the Courthouse Square Commission.
So move.
Second. We have a motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Would you like to adjourn the Historic Preservation Commission?
Is there any other business for the Historic Preservation Commission? If not, is there a motion to adjourn? So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
We adjourn.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Sure you want to stick around?
Sir?
Well, ask them, sure y'all don't want to stick around?
I'm gonna stick around. I want to see how it's supposed to be done.
All right, we have minutes from September 5th to approve. If I can hear a motion, please.
I so moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Taylor gives an aye as well.
That's all right.
All right, we had 2 administrative approvals. Assuming nobody wants to pull those off and discuss them, we will enter into the public hearing portion. We've already checked off number 7. So, Andy, I understand needs to recuse himself for case number 464.
I do, for the record, Mr. Chairman, I have an interest in a property that's closely located to this particular property. Per our ordinance, I do need to recuse myself.
All right,
I'll step out.
thank you.
Can y'all hear me now?
Yes,
Awesome.
welcome. All right, case number 464, COA requested by Clay Scruggs for exterior renovations in addition to property located at 1002 Jackson Avenue East. Kate, please take it away.
Yes, so we considered this last month as a complimentary review. The applicant seeks approval from the commission to install a new 2-story balcony, awning, and staircase onto the existing building at 1002 Jackson Avenue East. The applicant would like to install a balcony across the front facade of the entire building, which encompasses several different spaces and businesses. The building currently features an outdoor patio area built according to the city's shared space guidelines, and the applicant currently leases the outdoor dining space from the city. If the balcony were approved for the space, the mayor and board of aldermen would have to grant a revocable license for the use of city right-of-way. 1000 to 1008 East Jackson Avenue is listed as non-contributing in the Courthouse Square Historic District, and is described as a 2-story stucco-covered brick early 20th century commercial building. And we can see from the Sanborn map that the building was built as a hotel. It was later used as apartments before converting to restaurant use in the 1990s. I attached a memo that was prepared for the commission in May of 2019 regarding balconies on the square, particularly balcony requests for primary facades. Since that meeting, we've had 1 balcony approved by this commission, which was constructed based on a historic photo of the building, and that was constructed entirely on property owned by the applicant or owner of the building. It was the owner that built it. While the building is listed as non-contributing due to significant alterations, particularly to the windows, storefront, etc., the form and footprint of the building remains, and the commission should consider the new addition using the recommendations of the Oxford Design Guidelines. I put a bulleted list of them in your report, but in short, a new addition to a historic building is considered to be successful if it preserves significant historic materials and features, preserves the historic character, and protects the historic significance by making a visual distinction between what is old and what is new. New additions are evaluated on their presence. I'll pull out the ones that are most relevant here, but additions should be located to non-character defining elevations. Additions should not remove, damage, or obscure character defining architectural features. Additions are representative of the time in which they're built and should always be compatible with the existing structure. An addition should never mimic or recreate the architecture of the primary structure. Additions should be clearly identifiable as additions. And architectural details should complement the main structure, but should be clearly differentiated. Due to the location of the proposed balcony on the front of the building, staff finds that the design does not meet the recommendations of the Oxford Design Guidelines. It's to be located on a character-defining elevation and would obscure the front facade of the building. So staff is recommending denial of the COA. And our applicant is here to present, if you'd like to come up. Does anyone have questions about the staff report before? Okay.
So we'll have Clay Scruggs present.
All right, thanks again for consideration here. I just wanted to,
Any specific detail you want on here? Just the.
let's see. If you could go to the 3D, keep going, I'll tell you when to stop. Right there, please, that one. Yeah, that one right there. Okay, so when y'all did your complimentary review, you gave some concerns, and I just want to let you know how we've addressed them to try to respond to those comments and get you an answer. This is actually we did this rendering based off of photos in real time on site. So the concern about the staircase, you can't see it. When you're driving down the road, you won't be able to see it coming. I mean, you might see a hair of it, but the majority of it's screened by the trees from both directions. So is it from an experience, drivability, walkability? The staircase is not going to be an impact. That was one of the things you were concerned about. I met with the fire department, with the police department, and the building department, and all of them were in favor of this, at least verbally. Of course, they won't give me anything in writing, but that they would certainly think it's a good idea. From a life safety perspective, the police thought it was fine. In fact, encouraged it because of the additional point of access and not creating so many lines in front of the main entrance. And then fire department had the same thing. Obviously, they were encouraged by an additional exit of the building. And just so y'all know, because there is one exit, there are some occupancy limits that the fire department will set on us. So it can't be, 500 people out there. We're going to have to protect that, and we will adhere to those rules. Building was fine with everything. This will have to be sprinkled, but high level, all the support from at least the people that I deal with every day on the operations side were in support of this. Obviously, they know their rules that you all have to follow. But overall, I think that we were able to, I guess you would say, accommodate the recommendations that you might lean toward approving. And I hope that we've shown that here in these illustrations.
Okay, thank you, Clay.
Any questions?
Discussion among commissioners?
I think this is a really thoughtful design, as I think I said last month, and I think it looks nice, and I've thought about it for a long time and reread the balcony report, and I realize that Stuart's thinking about the staircase. I'm thinking about the balcony itself, and I'm going to have to vote to deny the COA because I don't think we would be following the guidelines if we allowed the balcony itself.
Understood.
Any other thoughts from other commissioners?
Would you just explain the staircase? I can't quite.
Yes, ma'am. That's a good one right there, Ben. So that staircase, it will run obviously from the balcony. It's required as an exit. So it will come down. We will use it for entrance and exit. So right now our only entrance is, if you see the two double glass doors on the bottom left of the screen, right under the awning, that's our entrance to the upstairs. This would give us a secondary entrance, which would create less lines along Jackson Avenue. But that's it, as you can see to the right. It's behind that tree.
What did you mean that we would not see the staircase?
When one of you brought up that driving down the street, you didn't want to see the staircase because it doesn't look great. And staff even gave some examples of other places where they are. I went out and did some field studies of, can you see it? And that was it.
Okay.
One other thing, and then I'll let you guys vote, but the other thing that's different about this, because I know another concern was, well, if we let you do it, everybody else is going to want to do it. But one of the things that's different about this is that we ground lease this spot. We lease this. There's no other, if you go around the entire square except our street, that is not a condition that exists. We are paying for all of this square footage underneath that patio. And that's what makes this different. I know what the ordinance says, but the ordinance doesn't say anything about lease space and how to consider that. So just consider that nobody else can come in here and say, well, you did it for these guys, because their condition is different because I lease the ground below it.
Well, you You do have other businesses on the square that actually lease space. You do have Funky's leases space, and so does St. Leo's.
Well, I understand. I'm saying.
I'm just saying that.
No, that's right, on our street. And I did say on our street. Let me be clear. The only people that do it are right on Jackson Avenue. There's no other opportunity to do that, just as a note.
Yeah,
Okay?
I understand.
Thank you.
They may have questions.
Yeah, you may want to stay up. One thing I try not to do is stack the odds as chairperson. So I want to make sure everybody else is speaking their mind or has their thoughts together at least before I speak. Well, I'll jump in. Yeah, Taylor, you have any thoughts you want to chime in with?
Honestly, can y'all hear me first?
Yep.
What?
He's asking if we can hear him.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, good. I was kind of up in the air about this, but going by and actually looking at the building, I think my concerns really fall more in line with what Dorothy just said than anything else. Sitting on it and thinking about it for a long time, which I have, I'm of the same mindset, not even sure that where I once thought, look, you could convince me to approve a balcony for sure, but the stairwell was a huge issue for me. I'm not even sure about the balcony now in retrospect. So that's just kind of where I'm at with this.
Okay, thank you, Taylor. Yeah, I mean, Clay, I appreciate the thoughtfulness in the design. It's a good presentation. And if this were not a historic, if I were not a historic commissioner and this were not a historic issue, I would look at it and say, looks good. You know, looks like it'll function well, it'll meet your needs, and it looks good, activates the street, you know, but we have a box that we have to operate in that has guidelines that we have to evaluate these by. And it does not check enough boxes that I feel that I can approve it. Balcony and stair, I'm sorry. Like I said, it's two different hats. And as a commissioner, it just doesn't meet the guidelines, unfortunately. So I could not approve it either. It's not just the stair, but the stair is a big one for me. So I feel like we've heard from everyone. It seems like there can be a motion. You don't want to table this, right? You want to go ahead and get this over with and get to the board?
Yeah, let's get it.
Yeah.
Give me my no.
Get ahead to the Board of Aldermen. Okay. Understood. And no hard feelings at all. You know, we get it. So is there a motion? And a reminder, no motion means it fails to pass.
I think just as staff, I'm going to advise you, I understand the no motion, but that, if you're not in support of this application, I would advise you as staff to make a motion to deny this, so that way the mayor and board of aldermen can understand where y'all are on this.
Agreed. Yeah.
I move that we deny on the basis of it not meeting our guidelines because of the balcony.
All right, we have a motion. We'll need a second to vote. Okay, I'm going to second.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, none opposed. Sorry, Clay. Thank you.
Thanks, Clay.
All right, moving on to case number 465, COA requested by the Velvet Ditch, Jared Foster, to install signage and for review of changes to previously approved COA. However, I think that this is just signage, right?
Just signage
Okay,
only.
so I'm gonna change this. This is,
Oh, no, it's signage and to paint the metal siding.
okay, so, and for review of changes to previously approved COA, we're crossing that out. So
No, yes, that's right. Yeah,
to
cross it
install
out.
signage and paint
Yes.
of existing structure, okay.
Yes, thanks for that clarification. It was a little up in the air for a while. Okay.
Okay.
So we're all familiar with this property.
Oh, I'm sorry. Andy, please come
Yeah.
back in.
Okay, so yeah, the current Abner's site, the new site of the Velvet Ditch, the applicant seeks approval to install wall signage and to paint the existing metal siding. The applicant has provided a variety of options for signage, which I'm sure you guys saw in your packet. There were several choices, images of which we included with the report. For the design, the applicant proposes 3 options, one with only the Velvet Ditch lettering, one with the Velvet Ditch lettering with a cocktail glass, and one with the lettering, the cocktail glass, and the crawfish. And then in terms of material, we also have 3 options there. The applicant proposes 3, the 3 material options are white form letters mounted to the building. The second option would be a flat face metal sign with printed letters, flat. And the third option would be a flat metal sign with raised lettering. All of these options would be externally lit. So the applicant isn't proposing any internally lit signage. So after speaking with Jared about what his preference would be, it would be the flat face metal sign with raised lettering with the cocktail glass and crawfish, as you guys are seeing in this rendering. Staff finds the proposed signage location appropriate. The design guidelines recommend that the sign should not overlap any architectural detailing. This parapet seems like an obvious choice for the placement of a sign. None of the 3 proposed material options are recommended in the design guidelines. However, this is not a typical site that you're going to see in the historic district. It's one of the only buildings that has metal siding in the historic district. The design guidelines note that there's an infinite variety of styles available for signs and that there's no need for a stock solution. While a custom wood signboard is recommended for flat signs in the design guidelines, the commission may find that the use of metal in this instance is appropriate, as the existing building features metal siding, and the proposed new sign will be located on the metal parapet. In terms of what staff is recommending regarding the signage, we agree that the metal signage with raised lettering would be most appropriate for the material. In terms of painting the siding, there's nothing in the design guidelines that would prevent the existing metal signage or siding from being painted. So we're recommending that that be approved. So if the commission determines that a proposed design is appropriate, staff recommends approval of the metal signboard with raised lettering with the conditions that staff is delegated the approval of proposed lighting, since it's not included here, for the sign, and that final approval by staff of the proposed sign, including the dimension and material of the raised lettering. So we're not seeing that here in the proposal, but that would be like what inch depth the raised letters would be, which the signage company can always provide, and what material those letters would be made of. So it's a lot of options. I'm happy to answer questions about the staff report, and Jared's also here on behalf of his side.
So first, any questions for Kate from us? About guidelines and whatnot? No? Okay. So yeah, Jared, if you want to come up, I'm going to hit you with a question right away if I can. If we could scroll to the, keeping this image in mind, scroll to the next one. Yeah. So we're saying metal signboard with raised letter siding. The signboard portion is the black portion. The white portion would be the raised. Am I understanding that correctly?
Correct, yes.
Okay. And then the red in the cup, or in the event of the next one, or sorry, the previous one, the red of the cup and the crawfish would be in the same plane as the black background, just different color.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct, yeah, and the main reason that I did it this way, obviously, I think the tent that we have up there is, when you see it in person, if you guys are close, it's pretty much ruined when it comes to like, I've pressure washed it, and I've put a lot of work on the front side, on the left side of the building, and I could barely get off what I needed, so I kind of felt like, I spoke with, your guys' team as well, and There was no recommendations on their end when it really came to what color it should be, but I felt like black was the best way to keep it professional looking off the red brick. And then instead of putting seafood and sports bar and having all that extra writing, the only option I felt to distinguish what company we were was to add our crawfish/lobster. No, it's okay. It's the same thing technically on our menu because we do sell both. We do sell we do sell both. So also, you know, the reason that I chose that sign is my mom's handwriting. She's the investor behind the business right now, and that was a huge thing for me to have something from her. That's why I chose the writing. I would have gone with something more traditional. We also already in a recommendation from the city as well. We went ahead and started the process of removing Abner's sign. We removed the sign from the front of the building, and then the street sign, the pole sign, it seemed that was another thing that you guys wanted to remove, so we went ahead and started removing that. I put a pause on that, but this week Ben confirmed that I could go ahead and remove that pole sign down, and we only presented one sign, even though we do have 3 roads, technically 4 roads facing our business. I would have put in for a second sign, but I wasn't sure of our future plans because we were still in the midst of what our COA would approve, and last week that was obviously shifted, as everybody knows, so this was the best thing for us.
Okay, thank you. And so just so we understand, one thing we try not to do is design by committee. You make a proposal, this is what you want. You've given 3, but we understand that the first one is the one that you want, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yes,
sir,
okay.
That's correct.
All right, commissioners, any questions, comments, concerns to relay?
Subject to the COA's guidelines or requirements, I move that we approve.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
To be clear, we're approving his preferred sign, which is this that we're looking at here. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Taylor?
Just to clarify, that was subject to staff conditions.
Right, yes, subject to all COA conditions, right.
So
COA.
we're talking about the one we're looking at right now, right?
Correct.
Right.
I'm a no.
The lighting, to be fair for you guys, all I really wanted to do was make sure the lights were shining up there. I didn't have any plans to put lights behind it. I was trying to copy a lot of the stuff that was already like newly approved.
Yeah.
And that's the reason I went away from vinyl lettering, because it was something that seemed like you guys were kind of trying to steer away from.
We prefer external lighting like you're proposing. Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right, we had one that Taylor was no, the rest were yes, and you're approved.
Thank you. Awesome. All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
And Jared, included too the final approval of the material for the sign, so we get your John. The depth of the line and stuff, just so that.
He asked me that earlier, and I'll make sure he said that. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Is there a motion to adjourn? Is there any discussion for staff post-meeting? No. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.